welcome back to the podcast. I'm sitting here with Randy Petersen, somebody who has been a friend of mine for a couple of years now, a couple of few. I'm not really sure. Maybe we can get into the timeline a little bit in our conversation. But Randy I always introduce him as a writer, an author. He's authored many books, and we've become collaborators on a number of different projects. And I think our dynamic really works because you're really good at expanding on ideas, and I'm really good at simplifying ideas. And so between the two of us, we've kind of got a yin and yang thing going. And so I'm very glad to have you as one of the first guests on this podcast, because people should know who you are, first of all, because if they're working with me, there's a chance that they're also working with you. And because you have a lot of great information to share. So I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be with you and talk with you.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed many conversations, just on the phone, on Zoom, a few in person, and so happy to record this so that other people can join in on the fun.
Yeah. I think you're one of those people that at least 3 or 4 different times I've said, this should have been a podcast after we've gone around and around on a topic for a little bit. So I'm excited to see if maybe we can create a podcast out of this. Yeah, so, I introduced you as an author. I always say 30 books. I don't know if that number may have grown, but, is there anything else I should be saying with your
Well,
biography?
no, I've been a writer all my life, really. My dad was a writer and editor. My mom was an English teacher. My sister is a playwright. My brother is a book publisher. It runs in the family. And from my childhood, I was writing. I look back, like many people do. I look back at some of those early things I did as a kid, and I shudder at how bad it is, how uninformed it is. But every so often I see something I wrote back then and say, wow, this is really good for a 13-year-old or whatever I was when I wrote that. So I've always loved that process of really thinking through things and finding the right words to communicate. I remember at a very young age, I might have been a teenager, when I said I developed 2 rules for great writing. 1, think about what you want to say. 2, write it down. And that was my secret to great writing. And even then, I mean, that really is something that we use in StoryBrand. We use in brand nerd marketing. We use that we take a lot of time to think about what a client really wants to say about their business, and then we write it down. So anyway, I'll fast forward. I won't give you all the twists and turns of my life. I will say that I've always also been interested, along with my writing, I've been interested in theater. Yeah. And along the way, I got a master's in theater at Villanova that I'm very proud of. I thought maybe I would move into teaching theater, and that hasn't happened so much. I did get one opportunity to do that for a semester, and it was wonderful. But I've done some directing in community theaters, that sort of thing, and it's a great joy, but it's an avocation of mine, not my main vocation. I've also been very involved in my church all my life, and sure. I've done a lot of teaching and organizing and that sort of thing in church situations. So really, those 3 areas: the writing, the church, and the theater, have been major areas of my life. Right out of college, I got a job writing for a Christian missionary agency, and then I got a job at a Christian magazine, and then that magazine, it was called Eternity Magazine. It was a really good magazine. My dad was the editor of it, so yes, there was nepotism involved in the hiring of a young kid just a few years out of college, but I think I did okay with that. And I don't think it was my fault that the magazine folded after a few years of my working there. There were a number of market forces that contributed to the demise of Eternity magazine. There is great irony in that fact that Eternity is no more. But I'm over it now. I became a freelance writer after that and began getting work, a lot of it in the Christian market. And since I knew a lot of people through the work that I had done, and but not exclusively. And I did a few other books on sports or on history. I found work where I could and built a freelance career. And along the way, I started doing books, and often it was writing along with somebody else. I did about a dozen books with a psychologist from Paoli, Pennsylvania, and books on relationships, on marriage. I've never been married, but I wrote the book on marriage.
There you go.
And but a lot of divorce, single parenting. Of course, I've never been a parent, but I've written the book on parenting, and so on. When you're a writer, you just write all sorts of things, but tapping into the knowledge of other people and sharing their wisdom on things. So yes, there are a lot of books out there with my name on it. In 2014, a friend of mine offered me a real job after all this freelancing. And I went to work for American Bible Society, which was just in the process of moving to Philadelphia at the time. I live right outside of Philly, and so that was very convenient for me. And it just seemed like the right thing for me at the time. And it was for about 4 years. And then for various reasons, I felt that it wasn't the right thing anymore, and I needed to go back to freelancing. And so at the end of 2018, I became a freelancer again. But I wanted to do something different. And this led the way for you and me to get together professionally. I remember that there were consultants. When I worked there, I was heading up a content team, and I had writers and editors working with me to create content, and we did a lot of planning of these things, and sometimes we would bring in consultants to talk about what to do, and we paid them a lot of money, and I knew exactly how much we paid these people to tell us what to do. And I said, I want to do that. I want to be the consultant to tell people what to do. And so after I was freelancing, and I called one of those consultants and said, what should I do in this new adventure of freelancing once again, but wanting to be a consultant? And he said, get involved with StoryBrand. It was still fairly new at the time. Donald Miller was doing this great marketing thing. You could become a marketing consultant in the StoryBrand group. And so I looked into it, got the training, went to Nashville for a week, and learned everything they could teach me, and then kind of set up shop as a marketing copywriter, as a consultant, all the things that we did with StoryBrand. And that's when I met you, because we had there were these regional meetup things that, and there really weren't that many in the greater Philadelphia area. But there were a couple in Delaware, and you were in Pennsylvania, I was in New Jersey, and we gathered in Wilmington, Delaware, for a dinner together and to talk about what we did. And some really great relationships came out of that. Mm-hmm. And one was with you, because I was saying I love doing the work. I love listening to people, figuring out what they need, and writing copy for them. I just don't like getting the work. Mm-hmm. I don't like that process of pounding on doors or I mean, now it's of course email but cold calling and saying, you need me, and that's just not what I do. I'm kind of shy, actually, and you were saying exactly the opposite. you were saying I love talking to people and getting getting work, and I just need help in doing all of it. And so that I knew that would be a good combination for us, and it has turned out to be that way in the last 4 years, really, that we've known each other. So it's um, it's it's been a great experience, and I've stretched new muscles with that. Recently, I decided not to continue with the StoryBrand thing, but you're still with StoryBrand, and I still work with you on it. And they can't unteach me what they've already taught me.
Exactly.
So whatever wisdom they have shared with me, and I am totally positive on them. I have no bad things to say about StoryBrand. Happy that they've been able to train me as they have. I've learned a lot and have had some great experiences with them. So grateful for that, but eager to move on with all sorts of different writing that I can do at this point.
Yeah, it's not a small number to re-up every year with StoryBrand, and you have to be able to justify that and know where your sources are coming from, and to go back in time to that first time we met. I remember I was going into that meeting assuming that I was going to be kind of low man on the totem pole in the meeting, and I got there and it was actually mostly comprised of newer guides who were all kind of like wide-eyed, like, what have we got ourselves into? And
you were high man on the totem pole, as I recall. You were the one who
I ended up
had
at that
it
first
together
one,
more than the others
which
did, and
which
it was
was
great for you to do
shocking to me.
Yeah.
Genuinely, like I was intimidated to go, and then I got there, and yeah, it ended up, we kind of started talking numbers or whatever. Like, well, I made a little work here and there, and I'm like, oh no, I'm making a living off of StoryBrand. And that's because I don't know, you framed it as I like talking to people. I don't think that's it. I like drumming up business, but I prefer to do it all digitally. I prefer to have people find me and contact me, and then we talk. I don't do a lot of outreach.
The other thing you have, and you're going to think I'm just buttering you up now because we work together, but I've watched you work and watched you do this. That you have a lot of experience in business, in different kinds of businesses, in blue collar work kind of business, and with contractors and builders and that sort of thing. And so you know the language, you know the issues, you know what they're dealing with, and the way you talk to these people, they see that right away. They understand that you understand them, and it really creates a relationship that it yields good business for us, but I think it's also just a great personal connection. You really care about what they do, and you understand it at a deeper level than most marketing people do. I certainly don't understand their business that way, at that level, and so I just sit back and let you carry the conversation because I'm learning about what they do and what I need to write based on your kind of inside information conversation with those clients.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what that is, other than I'm pretty well, and I think it's all natural. I don't think it's necessarily learned, but I'm pretty good at getting into a conversation with somebody new and being able to immediately identify something that we have in common. And I'm one of those people that knows a lot about, or I should say, I know a little about a lot of things, is what it comes down to. And I know a lot about a few things as well, but I know a little about a lot of things because I'm curious and because I spend large amounts of time consuming information, and am pretty strategic about the information that I consume. In other words, I'm not just a casual scroller of news and or social media. Usually I have a mission when I'm gathering information. So, yeah, I think that's what I ascribe it to anyways, is this kind of curiosity. And then when I get on a call with somebody new, I just ask questions, and it tends, my curiosity. People like to talk about themselves, which is not necessarily my strategy, but it helps me understand where their problems are and if I can help them and how I might be able to help them.
Well, as long as I have you talking about yourself now, let me ask you how you got into the marketing business. I've been telling my story, and let's hear yours.
Okay, fair enough. So, we all have these kind of stories that we tell ourselves, and I certainly am not. Well, let me start over. We all have these stories that we tell ourselves, and I'm certainly one of those people. Like, I'm constantly going, how did that happen? I think what I've kind of settled on is my first marketing gig, and even my first digital marketing gig, was selling tickets to shows for my band when I was in college, freshman in college, that kind of time period. And we sold these tickets through MySpace and other platforms that don't exist. I mean, MySpace barely exists. But it was a lot of, word of mouth, cold contacting people, and I guess Facebook was around then, so you could create a Facebook event and invite people that way as well. So yeah, that was kind of my first. I don't even I don't even know that I was that particularly good at it. I don't. I really liked writing songs. That was more my side of things. I liked writing songs. I wanted, people to hear my songs, and so yeah, that was kind of my first gig. So I often say I was a musician, or sorry, I've often said I'm a songwriter turned copywriter, and I'm a musician turned marketer. And
Did you play an instrument?
yeah, I play guitar. I mean,
Okay.
I've been I've played guitar since I was about 12 years old, and growing up in the church. When I was about 3 days into playing guitar, they put me in front of people to play guitar.
That is so much my story too. I wrote songs. I played guitar.
Okay,
I
there you
was
go.
playing in the church, and it was exactly that kind of thing.
Yep.
They needed someone to lead the children's song fest, and
Yep.
so
Yep.
they pressed me into service. Go ahead.
Well, I remember I was in sixth grade, and they're like, "Hey, now you're leading for all of our middle school events. You're we got a slide projector. They got the transparency. They put the words up on the wall,
Yeah.
and I would stand there and strum. And by my recollection, I wasn't that good, but I suppose for a sixth grader, I was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I ultimately actually went to college for music. And it wasn't until I kind of realized I was already doing everything I wanted to do in music, and you don't really need a music degree to do the things I wanted to do in music. There's this assumption that you got to go to college, right? And you just got to pick something. And I think this is still the case today. Kids think, well, the next step is college. And you go, well, I want to be a songwriter, so I'll go to college for songwriting, And if I heard a kid say that now, I'd be like, no, you write songs to be a songwriter, You don't go to college to be a songwriter. Go to college to be a teacher. You go to college to be a doctor, And so that was, but anyways, I had that revelation a little too late. Eventually, further down the road, went back and got a business degree, because it was I needed that piece of paper to open doors in my career, the degree. So yeah, that's kind of where my marketing path started. What ultimately happened is I realized I'm a very left brain, right brain person. Like I think very logically, but I'm also very creative. And so like that's a tension that I kind of live with, and I need to feed both of those to be satisfied. If I have to spend all day being creative, I just kind of long to do something outside of my right brain, if you will. And then likewise, if I just, if I was an accountant, I'd probably go home and be, painting in my garage or something. Like I would have to do something very creative when I got home, which is why I realized I can't be an accountant. I still think outside of the like touring schedule and stuff, I think I would have really enjoyed being a musician. But that was ultimately what I realized was not going to work for me, was just the the work, the grind. And I suppose if the grind, if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, I guess, then it's not meant to be. And so that's where, marketing came into play. I realized marketing it's business, but I get to be creative. I get to be professionally creative. And so that was really appealing to me. And I've always been able to figure things out pretty well. School was easy for me, so like I've just been able to kind of find roles where they need somebody who can just figure stuff out, and that's how I moved up. Was I just figured stuff out and helped the companies I worked for do things that they couldn't previously do, and that's where my value was. But eventually, it was actually because I had a job that I was realizing it was kind of a dead end, or at least they weren't able, I wasn't able to advance how I wanted to advance and how I felt like I earned, and even had some promises that weren't delivered upon that just really were frustrating. And I felt like I was being misled, and even had, there was even some signs that I was lied to. And so it was, or deceived, or however you want to put it. So anyways, I just decided I'm going to try to do my own thing. I actually, silly enough, sat down with my bosses at the time and told them, in light of recent developments, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a side hustle, and I hope that's not a problem, but that's what I'm going to do, and I did. And it was about a year and a half later, not even a year and a half, a year and a couple months, that Brand Nerd, which I'd already started developing as the side hustle, I signed a client that was kind of the one where it's like, I now officially can't do both. I have to choose. And yeah, the following week was my last week. So yeah, and there's a bunch of circumstantial stuff that was, I won't get into, but essentially there was a lot of signs that was meant to be. My plans I thought I was going to have to quit and find health insurance and all that stuff right away. The way it worked out, I did not. They actually eliminated the position, and so I got health insurance for I could qualify for, because my position was eliminated. I actually and got a little bit of, had unemployment for like a week because as soon as I started making money off my next thing, I didn't. So anyways, it was just a God thing.
Yeah.
And it was nice too, because my wife was a little hesitant about the whole thing.
Well, yeah.
But once the issue was forced, she also realized, oh, this is a God thing. So yeah, I mean, I didn't really intend to get into that whole saga, but that's what happened. And frankly, part of what that was is they were going to pay for me to do StoryBrand, not certification. They were going to pay for me to do StoryBrand training on behalf of their company, and essentially, go down as a representative of the company and learn StoryBrand the company and come back. And that was essentially a $3,000 or $4,000 expense that they were going to pay for me. But when they told me that I couldn't do that they had decided, we're not going to do that, we don't have the budget for it or whatever, I decided, well, not only am I going to do it, I'm going to get certified. That was kind of my I this is something that they had, and I had already registered under their company names. I had to kind of unravel all of that so for the first couple weeks in StoryBrand, all my contact information was incorrect and all this stuff. But anyways, I did the certification instead, and that was, that was a big moment for me that turned into, now a company where I have employees and an office space and a podcast.
I want to talk about StoryBrand
Sure.
a bit here. Because so you've gotten us to that point of your certification with StoryBrand, your training, which was 2018. Was that? I think you were a year before
sounds
I
right.
did it.
Yeah.
So I was doing it in.
I just hit 5 years, so 2018.
Okay. And so I was in 2018, and so. Did StoryBrand, what kind of impression did StoryBrand make on you? And I'm not looking for it to be, the heavens burst open and angels are singing and, that sort of thing. But did it make sense to you? Did it offer a path that you were looking for, essentially, then? Or what was your reaction to what you learned there from StoryBrand? Was it just another marketing process there? Was it something that you were looking to learn, or did it surprise you in any way?
So I went into StoryBrand knowing all that I could know about StoryBrand from not being in the program. You know what I mean? Like all the outside looking in information, I had consumed it all. I'd listened to every episode of the podcast, some of them multiple times. I had listened to most of Don Miller's interviews on other podcasts. And the reason for that was, well, I should say, I can't really remember when I first heard about StoryBrand. What I know is that Donald Miller was in my, I knew of him through his early writing. Blue Like Jazz was a book that I read in college and really enjoyed. And then when they turned it into a movie, I was one of the 3 people that saw that. I'm not really joking about 3 people. The theater I was in, I think I was one of 3 or 4, and I brought one of the people. So, and they had no idea what they were. And I actually thought it was a pretty decent movie.
I read the book, loved the book. I didn't even know there was a movie.
Right, exactly.
So,
yeah, I thought the movie was pretty decent. Like I enjoyed it, but.
So there's a marketing failure there somewhere.
Right. Well, I mean, it was Don really used that as his origin story. Essentially, I guess it pretty much drained his bank account and sent him into depression and all this other stuff. Yeah. Prior to what was Storyline, that then became StoryBrand. Storyline was his essentially a small conference he would hold where other people who wanted to be memoirists would attend and learn kind of his approach to writing. And somewhere in there, he stumbled upon this connection between marketing principles and the hero's journey, the famous literature. Anybody who took a high school English class, they might not remember it, but they probably covered the hero's journey. Yeah. That's at least my understanding.
Well, and actually, the connection had been made between screenwriting and the hero's journey.
Yes.
What he did was to apply it to marketing.
That's true. That's true.
And that made and it fit. It just it fit beautifully then.
That's true. It was his experience in creating the Blue Like Jazz movie that helped. When that actual connection between marketing and the hero's journey became obvious, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure what happened is I heard Don Miller on a podcast. I think it was the Relevant podcast, if I had to guess. It was this kind of podcast that was really big, and it might still be. I don't know. I just don't listen to it anymore. But it was their tagline was the intersection of Christianity and culture. That was kind of where they lived. And Donald Miller was on there. He started talking about StoryBrand marketing, yada, yada, yada. So I listened to the very first StoryBrand podcast episode the day it came out. And I was hooked pretty much from the start. I think he had great guests. He had like Michael Hyatt and Patrick Lencioni, and these like top tier marketing and business people. And they covered the first episodes, covered the 7 steps of the framework. And I remember when they got to the part about the customer is the hero, I was like, I'm in, And I think that's where a lot of people end up going, is like, hey, that's when we talk about story-based marketing, it's not just tell your story. And that's not nearly as interesting. It's not that it's not interesting, but it's not nearly as interesting as telling a story that puts your customer in the role of the hero, and you position yourself as the guide. So you're Obi-Wan Kenobi, they're Luke Skywalker. And it helped that he kept using Star Wars references too, because, I'm Star Wars, that kind of, my company is called Brand Nerd, and that's not because I'm the world's biggest nerd, but I do nerd out over brands, and I am a qualified nerd. I'm going to see Return of the King for its 20th anniversary tonight, which is why we can't have dinner together. So, there's
losing out to
if I had an extra ticket, I'd bring you along, but it is a 4 hour and 20-minute film, so
right.
But anyways, that is my StoryBrand experience. So, when I'm trying to remember what the timeline was for the book, but the book came out prior to me going to Nashville to get certified. Yeah, it definitely did, because I remember buying a copy for my bosses at the time. And I actually, they ran this deal that if you pre-ordered it and sent them the receipt, they would send you an advanced reader's copy. The podcast kept advertising that. So I actually did that. So I somewhere over at my desk, I have an advanced reader's copy. It's a little bit slightly different than the actual published version. And I wore that book out and was using it in...
Now, that's the Building a StoryBrand.
Building a StoryBrand.
Right. That was his initial salvo into the marketplace there.
Yep. So. Building a StoryBrand. So they had already been doing the workshop at this point. Like, the workshop had already existed before he wrote the book. They had been teaching this framework. And I had almost gone several times, but it was expensive. And... I was, I didn't make a lot of money where I was working. I mean, it got us by. We made enough, but that was a big thing to go down there, which is why I wanted to do it through work, to be able to do that. And I mean, at the time, I've always wanted to have my own company, not so much because I'm like I need to have personal freedom perspective, but more just like I really like leading, and I like that part of business, and I'm a visionary, like I'm to a fault, like, and so the thought of having people to help me bring these visions to reality that I almost feel burdened with at times, like these good ideas that I can't do anything with. I'm like, this is a good idea, but what am I going to do with it? It's just, I don't have anything to make this happen. So that was not a thought at the time to start my own company, but yeah, my hand was kind of forced, and so I did, and I'm really glad I did.
Yeah.
So how did you find StoryBrand? I know you had a recommendation.
Yeah, and I talked to that consultant, and he was not in StoryBrand himself, although he later did get certified with StoryBrand. But he just had friends who were doing it, and so he recommended that. And I mean, I was really... Well, that February I went for the training. I was in my second month of my renewed freelance life. I had been paid through the end of
Really? I
December
didn't
from my
realize that.
job, and then was setting up shop again as a freelancer. And what do I do? And well, I was calling StoryBrand and signing up for the February workshop
Wow.
there. Yeah, I felt StoryBrand. I mean, Don's just a wonderful presenter of that, and makes it sound. I mean, he's a good teacher, and these principles he presented, and he had enough practice with it. It was good. It seemed very simple, almost too simple, and but I bought it. I said, yeah, this is great, and really felt. I think coming back from that conference, from that week of training, I felt empowered to be a marketer. Okay, so great, I've got all the StoryBrand stuff. I know how to talk to people about their business and that sort of thing. So what do I do now? I get home and I don't have a business.
Right.
I don't. I actually had registered a name of Petersen Creative Enterprises at some point, but it really wasn't. It was not a business really, and so all of the stuff that to put your name out there, to organize your stuff, to do the financials, and all of that, I had no clue what to do with all of that, and so I so it was a learning process, and a long learning process, and I think StoryBrand itself, the organization, has become better since then at helping people through that business building process. But I was totally into the StoryBrand theory of it, and I loved the work that I got, and really this continued through the was it 4 years with StoryBrand. I did brand scripts with people, and I did a number with you that you would bring me into conversations with clients, and we would talk through together. We made a pretty good tag team, I think, on that, where we would go through the brand script questions about who's your customer, what can you tell us about your customer, and a key question there: what problems do they have that you can solve?
Right.
And I would say there at least those two key questions that a lot of businesses overlook, and if they grab those questions and really take those questions seriously, and the one you mentioned earlier was the customer is the hero. That is not a question; it's the statement there that as you frame this hero story, it's not your story that you're telling; it's the customer's story. Well, and so what is the customer's story? Well, the customer's story is that they have a problem. And it may be internal, it may be external, it may be philosophical. They may think the world ought to work differently than it does. They may feel bad about not being able to do what they need to do or whatever. But your company, whatever your company is selling, your company is helping them solve a problem that they have. And once you identify that problem and how you're going to help them solve it, that's the key to marketing. That's it. And I think that's brilliant. I think it's simple but profound enough that a lot of people don't get it. And so we would come into a brand script conversation and talk with a client for an hour or two and go through who is your client, what problems do they have that you can help them solve, what are the different types of problems, how do you present your company as the one who will help them solve that, and so on. We'll talk about those questions more in a future podcast, I'm sure.
Sure.
But I found myself enjoying that process. That there was the interviewing kind of thing, the digging for There's something analytical about that. And so they know the nuts and bolts of their company. They know what they do, but they might have never thought of it in this way, and so um, they you're drawing out of them something that they know, but they don't know that they know, and so then out of that conversation, I would go and spend a few hours putting that together in a brand script, which StoryBrand sort of prescribed how that would be structured. But then I would write an additional what I call the brand script narrative, and it started with at the StoryBrand training, they had us do a kind of Mad Libs kind of thing, right? So they'd have fill in the blank things, and then you create a story for a business around that, and it would start like that. But then I'd have fun with it. As a writer, I would be creative with it and create a bit more of a narrative that was compelling, that was interesting, and people read that and they were energized. That's my business. That's what I do. And in some cases, it was too good because that was the copywriting that they used on their website. Except they weren't paying me to write for their website; they were just paying me for a StoryBrand. But I gave them something that was good enough to use for their website, and they did. But anyway, I enjoyed that a lot. So that sort of simple level of marketing, simple but profound level of asking the basic questions. I enjoyed doing that with a number of businesses. Didn't go a lot farther than that, and I was never. And that's really the specialty that I bring to you in Brand Nerd. And you have expertise in other marketing avenues and whatever. But if you need copy written, that's what I do, and I can interview a client and pull out from them those basic marketing principles that they need to put some writing in place.
Yeah. Yeah, you were talking about the StoryBrand, how the problem is kind of that. If you identify your customers' problems, that's where the hook is set. And the StoryBrand principle that we talk about is if you stop talking about your customers' problems, they stop listening to you. Essentially, and it helped. Like people want to be empathetic. They want to come across as knowledgeable. Well, there's no better way to come across as knowledgeable than talking about your customers' problems. And the thing, StoryBrand is a very simple to understand framework. It's not so simple to execute. I've found, because we'll get that from people. They'll say, "Well, let me send you my, I StoryBranded my company. Let me send it to you," and you're like, Yeah, this needs some work. It really does. But the one area that I think it does do a really good job at going deeper is in the problem, because they talk about external problems, internal problems, and philosophical problems. And this idea that if you just talk about your customers' external problems, the physical thing that's happening to them, then you'll be fine. But what really kind of levels it up is when you connect with them on that emotional or philosophical level. This idea of this is making you feel a certain way, or this is just plain wrong, that philosophical. And I get really into the philosophical. I think, at least the way that I approach marketing, I've seen that be really effective. When you can identify the right philosophical problem, it is really powerful, because it kind of encapsulates some of the other things that we talk about in StoryBrand, like empathy and authority and, this, even the call to action. Like, it all can be wrapped up, success and failure, philosophical issues.
Well, absolutely. StoryBrand talks about empathy being a key element there, that the whatever company is doing the marketing needs to show that they understand their client. and have at a feeling level that they empathize. The best way to show that you empathize is by stating what they're feeling, but they don't know how to put it into words.
Yeah.
If you put it into words for them, they will love you. They will say, "Yes, that's it. That's what I need." I've got an example for you of a problem, and we'll talk more in the future about some national companies and some of the things we learn and how we might apply StoryBrand to them. But I was thinking of one, and again, I don't. It's a commercial that I've seen, and I think it's Buick, and I think it's their SUV line that they do, and they have a number of commercials that are similar in this way. But this particular one has like a soccer mom who is really driving the soccer team to somewhere, and she gets to the field or whatever, and the kids come piling out of the SUV, and there's a guy she knows there, and what's really interesting here is that they're not having an affair, but she's thought about it. That there's a little bit of sexual energy there, and he just. Says, you drove all those kids here? Yeah. And, oh, yeah. And he says, it's so you. And it's so you. And in fact, that phrase, it's so you, comes in some other commercials for this same vehicle line. And so suddenly you realize, as a marketer, as I watch this, that there's a problem that they're addressing. We didn't know it was a problem yet, but it is. That because that's how they solve it, that this vehicle is you. If you're wondering, if you have an identity crisis here, if you are a soccer mom just ferrying your kids around and you don't know what your value is, if your husband is kind of ignoring you and you wish he didn't, and whatever, well, here's this other person's dad who's complimenting you and giving you attention and recognizing that this is something valuable that you are doing. And so the problem of self-esteem or self-identity is huge. And it's huge in that demographic.
Yeah.
And so this car company is smart enough to see that and to state it without stating it. They're not coming out and saying, you have problems with self-esteem, so let's fix that with by selling you an SUV. They don't need to. They're just saying, we understand the thing that would make you feel really good right now is for someone to identify this is you, that you have a unique value in the world, and that this vehicle helps you attain that great value in the world. So the whole it's a problem. I mean, it's really creative analysis and psychological analysis of a problem that. I mean, I bet they sell 1 million vehicles, or I mean, I'm sure they do. But there's. I'm sure that it is a successful pitch because they are really getting to a deep emotional level with that, and it's exciting to see. As a marketer now, I look at that and say, they dug to a new level with that. It's exciting.
Well, Buick is an interesting case study for marketing because of it's a brand that has a reputation that has to change because the demographic that drives a Buick won't be on this earth much longer. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the historical viewpoint of Buick. And so you see them trying to get away from the big, bubbly boat-like vehicles and instead create these vehicles that are more tailored to you. And they have another commercial that I actually thought you were going to go in this direction where they've got, it's one woman, but there's 4 different versions of her all in the vehicle. And it's essentially, it's a very similar message of, it doesn't matter which version of you this is currently in the vehicle, this vehicle is for you. it's
Well, and interestingly, it's a different demographic there
Yeah.
too, which has a
Yes.
different self issue that
Right.
they're dealing with. For a more millennial person
Yeah.
who that woman is, the problem is not I'm nobody. The problem is I'm four different people,
Right.
and how do I get the right vehicle for all of my different personalities?
Exactly.
Bingo, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So I have an interesting topic that I think is perfect for your current situation. If somebody came to you today and said, "I'm thinking about becoming a StoryBrand certified guide," what would your advice be to them?
I would say, well, I would ask a few questions there,
Sure.
but I would generally say yes. I think it was very valuable for me. I think
What's the caveat? What's the
I would say
when would you say no?
don't expect them to create your business for you. That's kind of what I was expecting, and where I fell short with it. That I neglected.
And to be
this
fair,
responsibility.
they sell it like that. There's a lot of promises.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not they're explicit or not,
Yeah.
there's certainly a lot of implied.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that you've got a lot of StoryBrand guides who are saying, "Yeah, I just passed $5 million in receipts, last week, or I'm taking a vacation on my yacht somewhere, or whatever." They're not crazy like that, but there is a lot of that.
I mean, I think
that talking about the numbers and the vast success that they have, and so here I am, struggling to pay my bills and not attaining that, and I feel what am I doing wrong here?
Yeah.
So I think setting expectations would be a thing that I would suggest to a person going into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think there's also there's a certain type of person that can really thrive in a StoryBrand community, because it really is a community, one that I'm not super active in the community part of it, because that's not the way I'm wired. It's not to say that I couldn't change and try to become that, but honestly, messaging people on Slack, or even just I'm not a social media person, so like this kind of community part of it really kind of misses me. What I enjoy is meeting people in smaller numbers, like if we do the meetups, which they just scheduled meetups and there's none in this area, so I probably should take over and start hosting them. But the thing I would say to somebody who wants to get certified is don't expect to make money off of this. Don't expect lead generation to come. There was a little bit of that early on, but even that is because I knew how to capitalize on some of that. Now the lead generation part of it really comes from your own part of it, and a huge factor in that is that StoryBrand, Donald Miller and StoryBrand are no longer, or I should say, StoryBrand is no longer an emphasis for Donald Miller. He's all about business made simple. They just launched a new book, How to Grow Your Small Business. They've got a product called Flight School that goes along with that, which is like a training program for different parts of your business, which is really, again, a really interesting evolution, because StoryBrand is still one of the things in Flight School, which I think is either a 6 or 7 part system as well. Interestingly enough, much like StoryBrand.
Yeah.
But marketing is 2 or 3. In reading through the book, marketing is one of them, and it's essentially the marketing chapter is just a condensed version of building a story brand and marketing made simple, and so really marketing made simple is now their other thing. So they've got a lot of intellectual property, which is an interesting. I think it's an interesting approach. They seem to kind of like. They have all these different, and even from an internet perspective, they've got all these different domains that don't do a lot of interaction with each other. For example, if you want to find the certified guide list to hire somebody, you cannot get there from StoryBrand.com. You can become a certified guide from StoryBrand.com. And I guess if you click on Become a Certified Guide, you might be able to then see that there's also a search option and search for a guide. But it's just interesting, kind of the they're more interested, at least the perception I have of that is they're more interested in getting more certified guides than they are about how do we drive traffic to this guide community. So
they say they do that. I mean, they say. I mean, and it may be just protesting too much. I understand, but they keep that promise alive there that we are driving, that every book Don writes is saying,
they definitely mention it. They definitely mention it.
Certified guides. So
I can see on my website the traffic that I get from the profiles, and there's little things about it that I find irritating. Like if you search my exact zip code, that doesn't mean I come up first. I might be fifth on the list, where they just kind of randomize anybody within a 25 square mile radius. And it's like, no, I think I should come up first if it's exactly my town, because nobody else is in my town.
Well, here's what happened. What happened to me with that, when I was still with StoryBrand, so I was there on their guide page, and I think a mistake that I made. I don't even know if it's a mistake or not, but where there was a place where you could say your price range for different things, and I always felt like I was underqualified or whatever. That I didn't have a lot of experience in marketing, and so I was still in those first couple of years. I was learning the ropes. I was figuring out how it went. And by the way, that's been a huge benefit of working with you. Is that with your expertise there, that you've guided me in some ways and taught me a lot. But I've always felt bad about taking too much money from people if I couldn't give them the highly experienced expert stuff. I thought I would, and I would work hard to give them the best stuff possible, but I wasn't fully confident in the quality. And I don't even want to say that, because I did work hard to give them good quality, but I wasn't that confident in my expertise, so I kept that number low. And so there's just $1 sign, and others had $2 or $3 or $4 signs. Well, what's going to happen then is that people who don't have any money are people who are starting businesses and are scraping by. They're going to look for the $1 sign people like me.
Exactly.
And so they'll contact me and they'll talk about their stuff, and I'll say, well, I'll charge you, $300 for a brand script, and $300, and I know that other people are charging, $1,000 or more. Actually, the brand script was sort of the foot in the door, and so maybe they would charge a lower rate for that, but very quickly push them to do a website for a couple thousand or more, but I was recognizing that they didn't have a lot of money to spend, and so often this brand script would be the only thing that they couldn't afford. They couldn't hire me to do a website. So, like I say, when I give them a brand narrative, they use that for their website, because they really can't afford to hire me to really write something specifically for their website. And anyway, there's good and bad about all of that, because I didn't make a lot of money off of that. I'd make a few hundred here and there. And I felt good about, I was learning how to create these things, and people seemed very grateful for what I was giving them, and that boosted my confidence. But I also felt that I was really helping people figure out what their business was, and a lot of these people were really starting brand new and not knowing what they were doing. And as we talked, they would say, "Oh yeah, that's what I'm doing for them. I'm giving them a new world, a new understanding, a new excitement in life, or a new hope for something. Yeah, whatever it is that they were offering there, I could help them define that." Through the brand script questions. And it was. So I was glad for how I was helping people with that, but at the same time, I was not. It was not building my business that well. So back to your question of how would I advise somebody else, I think I would still advise them to do it. I think it's a valuable thing. I think they would learn it as long as they're not expecting too much, or if they're ready to put in the work necessary to build their marketing business. I was very unprepared for all of that, and so glad that I got the writing work that I did in that, and really glad that I could hook up with you. There are a few other agencies that I do some work with as well, and that's valuable to me. But it has I have had some good connections, some good relationships that I found very, very valuable.
Yeah, I think I haven't made as many inroads with people. There's been people that I've been able to connect with because of StoryBrand, like the clients that I've connected with. And I think I've done something like 200 individual calls with different, like 200 different businesses directly through StoryBrand. And, that's just the ones that we actually got to the part where we get on a call. So I've been able to make connections with a lot of businesses, and that's great. I definitely think there's a lot of people who fall into that kind of tire kicker, just at the used car lot looking around but not really ready to buy. So we've got some things built into our onboarding process that dismisses, helps them understand that this is not for them. But I tend to get complex problems to solve now, and that's got its own set of challenges, and it's a tough thing to qualify whether or not somebody should do something like StoryBrand, because it has to be your own thing. Like, it can't be. This isn't like I definitely saw it going in as a business opportunity, because I was like, there aren't many people in my area talking about StoryBrand yet, but this is big. Like, I think this is going to connect with a lot of people, and I live in an area where that customer is the hero mentality works with a lot of businesses. And it just never quite took off here like I thought it would. And then that, in combination with Don Miller kind of stepping away from the StoryBrand brand and more into the Business Made Simple, how to grow your small business guru, not just marketing guru. That's where I kind of go, all right, if you're going to do it, you better do it, and maybe consider doing, instead of doing that, do the Business Made Simple certification, which isn't just marketing, but you could potentially specialize in marketing and get the attention that way. But I think, it's an interesting, they've got, so another thing that actually is happening right now that I skipped to have this conversation with you is they're doing a community on Business Made Simple's website. They've got like a community feature now where you can make comments and ask questions. And if you as a guide, I can be on there, but I have to take their training. I don't know if that means like, don't use too many exclamation points when you're yelling at somebody on the internet. I don't know how that works. Don't type in all caps. But yeah, I assume that's a training I can do another time because I am interested in doing it. But that, they keep kind of layering in these different things. And I tend to just be kind of like, well, let's see what comes out. Let's see who finds me. And I'm definitely putting it out there. I've actually written quite a bit of StoryBrand content here lately just to see if there's still a connection there, if people are still looking for good StoryBrand content. And I just did a video where I essentially challenged chatgpt to create some StoryBrand brand scripts, and it created them for Starbucks, Coca-Cola, and Harley Davidson. And they're not bad. Certainly not bad. I'd say they get you 80% of the way there. Need some help specifically with the plan and with the problem are the two areas. The problem, they don't get into the internal philosophical at all. And the plan is like sometimes the steps don't really make a whole lot of sense.
Well, that's true of StoryBrand too, though. I mean,
yeah.
The plan was always kind of the loosey part of it.
Yeah.
That you could, just have three things, and
Yeah.
whether it's really a plan or not, or whether it's before they make the sale or after they make the sale, or whatever. There was always that confusion about the plan.
Yeah.
You just needed to tell people something to do, but
Yeah.
the specifics of it weren't always clear. But yes. So anyway, I don't blame a bot for kind of getting that wrong, because a lot of humans got that wrong too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've spent a lot of time on that, messing around with AI tools. It's definitely something that's going to be featured on the podcast because it's something that I'm very interested in. And I think it will help a lot of business owners with their business. It's going to help with productivity. It's going to help. It's kind of a shortcut or a cheat code for blank page syndrome, and which, as you know, as a writer, is oftentimes the heaviest lift, is to go, how do I fill this page with ideas? And then I can really do the writing, the massaging. I don't know. I should ask you, is that what your process is like? Or is that something, is the way I phrased that, is that something you can relate to, that blank page syndrome?
Oh, I do have the blank page syndrome, and yeah, and the cure is often just write something, just get something on the screen, and it's intriguing what you're saying, that that sometimes it's easier to edit than to create.
Yeah.
And so if a bot were to do my first draft, and then I would probably tear it apart and start it over, but it would at least get something going there. So that's a really intriguing idea, and I'll see if that works. But yeah, I mean, I just had that on I was last night I was working on a project. It was originally supposed to be done by end of business, but sometimes my business goes on until midnight. So it was 11:30 at night that I was finishing this project up, and it was a chapter of an ebook that I was writing based on a lot of statistical information that I was given, and I just didn't know what to do with it. It was I started and stopped, and there's pressure to be smart and yet to keep it simple, and to make complicated things simple. And sometimes I can do that well, but sometimes not. And there were like 4 different themes that needed to be knit together, and whatever. Just a normal writing day for me.
Yeah.
But yes, at numerous times in the past 3 days, as I've been working on this, I would say I've got the intro was particularly challenging, and I just stared at the blank screen for a long time. And then, really, with each new section of that chapter, I was, how do I start this? Where do I go with this? And again and again, it really was just put something down and then fix it later. Just get on the road and go, and you can retrace your steps if you need to. And I think that's what a lot of writers have learned to do. That the crappy first draft idea there is very much in play. And so maybe AI helps with that. I don't know. I haven't tapped into them yet.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was of the belief that creative jobs were the most safe when it came to AI. And even, you think about the phenomenon of the past 10, 15 years of everybody saying, teach your kids to code, or, when the, miners go on strike, it's, well, learn to code, is kind of the like uppity, solution. And what's fascinating is one of the first real examples that we have of AI is it's creating things and it's coding things. Those are the two things that it can do really well. So for me, it's more about, how do you learn to use the tool really well and bring your intelligence to the artificial, and create something that is as good as what you would have created if you did it yourself, but do it in half the time or maybe even a tenth of the time, depending on how your process is. So, for example, I recently was working on a business. It was a multi-generational business, and I was working on a proposal for them, and so I literally just said, like, what are some of the struggles that a multi-generational business would have? And the answers were like, oh my word, two of them maybe I would have thought of on my own, and the others were just, and this idea of like balancing tradition with innovation, and having worked in several family-owned businesses, that is exactly the struggle. Is there's always the person who's, this is the way we've always done things, and then there's the young upstart, typically, who's, no, we got to do things another way, and there has to be a balance of those two things. And the robot did a pretty good job at identifying that struggle. So yeah, I
Well, I've got a few thoughts on that, on the whole artificial intelligence thing, and I keep looking. I don't want to be naive about it, and I don't want to assume that humans have some secret human weapon that is not going to be able to be duplicated by AI, except I kind of cling to that idea that there has to be something that's human. And so a couple of examples I'll throw at you here. One is actually the last time I was here and meeting with you. I was getting something in my car, and you noticed that I had a roadmap, a paper roadmap in my car, and you mocked me for that
gently, but yes,
for having this old-fashioned paper roadmap. Sure, don't I know about cell phones? And well, the thing is, though, and I accept that. I can be a dinosaur in a lot of ways, but actually, as I left here, I had some time that evening. I didn't have to get home in any time, and this is an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from me to get home. And I said, I want to get lost. I want to have fun. I want to try a different way home and explore new territory and just have that experience. So Yes, I have Google Maps on my phone, and that's how I got here today, actually. But I didn't use Google Maps. I was using this map to say, oh yeah, there are some roads that I could take south of here and get into Maryland and then cross into Delaware. And so I was using the old-fashioned map to the non-computer option
Yeah.
to get myself lost but have a general bearing of where I was and how I could get back home. And it was a great fun. It was a good thing. So there's something about that experience of not knowing everything, of the mystery of it, the allowing yourself to get lost. I forgive you for mocking me. That I did. That's not a grudge I hold.
No, I actually looked at it, and I have very fond memories of my road atlas. I mean, when I turned 16, and my dad tossed me the keys to his old car. That was the first, that was the first thing he bought for me with the car, or gave me the car. But he put a big old road atlas that essentially was the state of Pennsylvania, and then had a little bit of the surrounding states as well. As just like and it was an inch thick, tons of pages because you could zoom down in on each area. But admittedly, I was not. I didn't have the best attendance record my senior year of high school. I was a very good student, and I think that's why I got away with what I got away with. But I did not. I would often just decide to do what you did. Instead of going to school, I'd go, I'm going to go get lost. And I'd end up in Maryland or, upstate Pennsylvania or halfway to Pittsburgh or whatever. And then I would purposefully try to go I'm going to try to get turned around, and then try to figure out, and then drive around, find a town sign, try to figure out where I am and get back to somewhere that I'm familiar with. And yeah, there's something about that. And I think, the parallel to that with AI, there's absolutely something human. And I think, there is not going to be the same value in something completely AI generated as there is in something completely human generated. However, I do think kind of a collaborative thing could be really interesting, which is where I'm at. And throughout my life, there's been numerous kind of milestones that I've predicted to be, oh, this is the next big thing. Podcasts being one of them. I was on to podcasts pretty early on, and I remember being like, man, I like podcasts a lot, but nobody knows what podcasts are. And I was constantly going do you listen to podcasts? What's a podcast? Well, it's kind of like radio, and it's on your phone. You it auto downloads. You don't have to do anything. And then when the new episode comes out, you have it, and you can, people are just like, that sounds complicated. I feel like AI is kind of that same thing, where people are like, you kind of go, well, if you can put in some prompts and it spits out some ideas, and people just kind of go, oh, that sounds complicated, or I don't know, I'm scared of what technology is doing. And I'm like, good.
Yeah.
Because then I get kind of first mover advantage. And I'm not first mover because there's already a gazillion AI tools that you can use. So people have been on to this a lot longer than me. But still, in the macro, percentages of human beings, I'm still in the first wave, I believe. And so I do think, for me, it's like, hey, this is, if I can invest some time in that and bring other people along with me, kind of go hey, this is what I'm learning. Check it out. And so we've actually set up brandnerd.ai for people to sign up, and literally all that free subscription is just us sending you the AI stuff. And the first thing we send you is the StoryBrand prompt that I use to create StoryBrand, SB7s, if you will. What do they call those? We always called them SB7. Are they just StoryBrand script?
Brand script is what I've always
But there's the brand script, and there's the brand script. What do we call the Mad Libs thing?
Oh, Well, that I've heard that called different things. I
Yeah.
call it a brand script narrative.
Yeah.
So I do a brand script.
But I think
and a
that's
brand
what
script narrative, but I
we
don't know
coined that
what
term when
language
we were creating the brand nerd deliverable. We
that
talked
may be.
about, remember we talked about the one, there's the one liner, we called it like the one paragraph story, and then the, I don't know.
Yeah, you did that. I don't think I ever came along on that.
Okay.
I'm a late adopter of that terminology.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I ever really I didn't hold it closely. I was just trying. There's so many there's so much insider language, ironically, with StoryBrand, because they're kind of anti-insider language, and yet they've managed to create quite a bit of it. So yeah, I was always trying to figure out how to make this a little more digestible for people. So that's why I kind of stuck with, hey, we're going to do this. We've got the roadmap, and then we've got the one page and the one paragraph, one liner, in the one page.
I have another example about AI. If you want to go back there.
Sure.
Because I keep looking for what is it? What can't AI do? Are there things that humans do better? And this isn't. I don't know that it's a great example because anyway, I'm a Wordle fan. I
remember
imagine you
Wordle.
are too. Yeah.
I mean, I was back in the day, but nobody would play me after a while. Yeah.
Well, so I get on. So every day I do Wordle, and I win. I think I've lost 1 out of 500.
Oh wow,
Wordle
you would beat me
things.
then for
So,
sure. I wasn't quite that effective.
The and so I have a pattern, and so my pattern is that I choose 2 words. The first 2 words are they include all the vowels, including Y. And,
Wordle. Yeah, that's a whole
Word-
different thing.
I thought.
What was that? Oh, Words with Friends. That's what I was thinking.
That.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
No,
That's
Wordle. I
social.
had a Wordle app that was like a ripoff because you could just keep playing and playing and playing,
Yes.
and it got too addictive. I had to remove it from my phone. But I do enjoy Wordle, and I had a pattern as well. I'd be interested to know what your pattern is.
My pattern it involves vowels.
Okay,
And
same.
So get all 6 vowels in the first 2 words.
Yep.
And so acute irony is one of my favorite, or gaudy olive, or audit money.
Okay.
And anyway, all of those have
My
all
first
the
one was
vowels.
always share, I think, because it's got multiple vowels, and S is
those are-
S is practically vowel level value.
Well, yes, and no. But so here's the thing.
Okay.
Here's why I use vowels.
If there's something I wouldn't have predicted, we would have got into.
Well, it actually comes back to AI in a way. Words, which are my life,
Right.
have they have patterns to them. They have structure to them, and the structure is around vowels.
Yes.
That basically you need at least 1 vowel for a syllable.
Yep.
And so if you have only one value, if you have only 1 vowel in a word, either it's repeated, which is one kind of word, or it's a 1-syllable word where you have a couple of consonant blends on either side of your vowel. And you learn something. You know something about once you know how many vowels are in the word, or what vowels are in the word, you know a lot. You sense a lot about what kind of word it could be, and what you're looking for, and what consonants you need to try. There. It is, I've tried it. I've tried it with the common vowels, the T, R, S, D, whatever. And it's not the same, because those are not structurally as informative as the vowels. And so anyway, at some point, somehow, recently, I actually it was a New York Times article about AI that somebody sent me, and I clicked on, and I had to subscribe to the New York Times in order to read the rest of the article.
Ah,
And
yes.
so, which I hate, but I did, and because then as long as I remember to unsubscribe at a certain point, I don't have
Right.
to pay anything. Um, so but meanwhile, I am a New York Times subscriber, which means I get an extra level of analysis on my Wordle experience. And
Yes.
so so after every Wordle now, I click, and a bot tells me how well I did, and it's like, oh, good first choice. Your first choice eliminated all but 350 words.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, and then second, I would not have picked this word. Uh, and because it only eliminated another 83 words, and so you still have 227 words
Okay.
remaining that it could be. And but eventually I catch up to it, and I wind up,
Right.
they say it could only be 3 words, and you pick the right word. And so all and I know it's not the most sophisticated bot doing the Wordle stuff, but it seems to only care about how many words are possible
Right.
left. And I am understanding something about how words work,
Yep.
and how the vowels and consonants interact in a word. And so I gain information that's not really just a list of, or not how many words are possible, but the types of words that are possible.
Yep.
Given the structural elements that I've seen. And so I do wonder if there is something there, if there is something more relational, something more human, my relationship with language that comes out in that again, I don't want to presume that there is no AI engine that could work the same way I'm working, but I do find it interesting that this particular bot and I are working on very different assumptions, and I still have a nearly perfect record on this, despite the fact that the bot keeps telling me that, well, I would not have picked that word.
So what's interesting with the way that machine learning, or I'm not super great with all of my specific AI definitions. In fact, I want to do a video on it, partially because I need to get better at all my definitions. But machine learning is machines learning from machines. Essentially, it's self-taught, if you will. But there's another version of it that's similar, where it's actually human guided learning, essentially, where it gives you a response. And that's a lot of what chatgpt is. It's essentially, OpenAI has made this public, and through the interactions that people have with it, it can decide, like, for example, if you generate 3 responses to the same prompt, you will get 3 different answers, and it will ask you, which one of these did you like the best, and you can let it know. So you could actually imagine your Wordle bot saying, is that helpful information? Do you find that to be helpful information? You could say, no, I'm more concerned with XYZ. And you could actually train your Wordle assistant to think more in the line of how you are thinking. So that's part of what this, you know, mystery around AI is. And, I call it a mystery because it's kind of like one of those things that, like, we know how to do it, kind of, but we don't really know exactly what's happening. In the same way that, like, I've heard anesthesia is like that. Like, we know the dosages, and we know, you know, how to apply anesthesia and wake people up and stuff like that, for the most part, at a very highly effective rate. However, my understanding is that they do not really know exactly why it works. And that that is kind of frightening when you think about the number of times that you've been under anesthesia. At least me, it's been multiple times, and the number of times that it's happening. It's probably happening 100 times in this county right now.
Right.
So, anyways, that's part of the mystery of AI, and that's why people are rightfully a bit frightened. I recently was able to go see Steve Wozniak, one of the founders of Apple, speak here in Lancaster, and that was one of the things he brought up. He's recently signed a letter of we need to pause AI and get kind of like we need to all kind of come together. Let's pause the AI competition, and maybe create some boundaries or ground rules or whatever. The problem is you can say that, but China's not going to do that probably, or insert other world superpower here. Like that's not the way it works. If there's something bad to be had from it, you want to be first, or you want to be, yeah. Anyways, so that's an interesting part of it too, is that it's not completely understood, and I honestly, even when it comes to stuff like coding, I'm not that interested in the coding. I only am interested in the things I'm already kind of an expert in, and how it can help me be more of an expert in that, and how I can help people understand what this means for them. Because I've done things where I've asked it for a keyword plan for a website. I want this website to rank higher for this keyword. Give me a plan, and it will spit out, well, you should write these dozen articles. Here's the general content, here's the title, here's the description of the article, and here's the topic. And then it'll, if you want it to, you can take it one by one and say, all right, write the article. And you can even do markdown. In other words, you can add the code in to have it be, this is the H1 title, this is H2. You can have it create the links between the internal links. Like if you upload your sitemap and say, hey, here are the pages. I want to have links I want this article to link to all these pages. It'll find the natural position for that link to exist. So
well, that's interesting, because you're starting with essentially computers are reading the copy on websites, looking for keywords. I mean, so there's a process in place that is that computers are involved in to determine the accessibility of your website and your SEO, and so it seems like a great idea to use computers then on the production end of that.
Yeah.
That rather than you jumping through the hoops that the computers are already setting out for you to maximize SEO.
Yeah.
Then you're asking a computer to help you do the things that you need to do to go jump through the hoops that the computers have set for you. So,
and to be fair, it currently chatgpt cannot browse the internet. It is limited to the data set that it has, which includes the internet, but it's backdated to whenever it was uploaded and whatever limitations they would have put on that. 3.5, I believe, was like 700 gigs worth of information, so smaller than the amount of information on my iPhone, or at least smaller than the information my iPhone's capable of holding. But that can still be a lot of information, especially if it's just written word. And 4 is, something 100 times more than that, maybe. I don't know. And again, those numbers may or may, that's what I've heard from people that I trust, but still, the idea of, so when I put in a keyword, it is not saying, okay, this is exactly, but that's coming. Their plugins are coming, and you'll be able to do that, which is part of why I want to be understanding of this version of it, because it's a lot easier to understand the new stuff if you understand what's now, and a lot of the tools that I use that I'm most expert in, I know really well because I've been using them for a long time, and they keep adding new stuff, and then I just have to learn the new thing too, which isn't so bad. But if somebody was starting out on a tool like, say, Webflow, the web development platform I use, if I had to start learning that today, I don't think I would have nearly the patience that I had for it back in the day when I didn't know anything about it and it was relatively simple. But since then, I mean, it's probably got 10 times the features that it did. But I've just learned them as they come out,
Yeah.
and that works. But it goes, oh, we've been missing this here. And I go, oh, my word, that's super valuable. I didn't even know I needed that. So,
Yeah. Well, with AI, and again, continuing the search for the human element, I also think back to, I think back to my work as an acting teacher, and
yes.
and there are two different kinds of acting, and sometimes you can tell, and sometimes you can't when you see it in the movies, on TV, whatever. There is actually what Aristotle would call mimesis, copying, uh, but there is then what Stanislavski taught in the classic, the method theater of Lee Strasberg and others in the last century, where there is a deep internalization so you're not just trying to copy how someone talks or how somebody moves. You are you are trying to understand and replicate an internal experience and allowing those experiences to come out in natural ways that again that mirror the way a person might really respond to these things, but there's an internal process going on with that. And as I say, there are a lot of actors out there who are just expert at the mimesis. They copy very well, and so they look like they are really feeling what the character is feeling. They look almost real in the process, and they've worked at this. They're expert at that. But I and most other acting teachers would train new actors: don't be satisfied with copying and looking like you are feeling those feelings. You want to have genuine empathy with the character. You want to feel what they're feeling, to understand at a deeper level, and to present that. That's what will truly. I mean, it moves. It moves acting from a craft into an art. It makes it something that touches the viewers in an emotional way, even if they don't quite understand it. It doesn't approximate an emotion. It lives it out. And so I feel that way a little bit with AI, where there is an kind of AI is observing and copying at this point.
Right.
And yet, there is so much, and perhaps it is empathy that we want to treasure, that we want to identify in our human interactions and value. That there are human elements that we can do. I love what you're saying about people are treating it as a fad, and it's exciting to play with.
Yeah.
Or they are afraid of it, and so let's get ready for the apocalypse because AI is taking over, and we've seen all those sci-fi movies, and they're scary. But what you're saying is, well, this is a valuable tool, and we need to learn about it and learn from it and learn how to employ it to make our human lives better. Even while we're not naive about the dangers of it, that we can take the appropriate pauses, observe the appropriate cautions, but there are ways that AI could be used for our benefit.
Yeah, and I think when there's new opportunities like this, there's a couple different lanes. There are the people that create the tools, there are the people that use the tools, and then these days there's the third lane of the people that talk about or teach the tools. And I would much rather be in that third lane overall, and but also the second and using the tools, so we're actually even when it comes to like video editing and things like that, we've looked at some AI tools that are really good at transcribing the video in real time, and then that's the big thing now. You got to put captions on all your videos have to have captions, particularly for the short form, because maybe people want to scroll in silence, but they still want to see what the video has. Is kind of the thing. But that's the lane I want to live in, and I think what getting in now, even if it's not a huge investment of time, I think it's that kind of compounding interest that you get from starting from square one and having a competitive advantage. It's so hard to find competitive advantages these days. And so for me, that's why I go, this is a blatant opportunity for a competitive advantage. And it fits in my wheelhouse because I love new things. I love technology. I love business. And, so it works for me in the same way that, in the same way that growing up, I was, in high school when the internet started to come to prominence, people started to have high speed internet and we could do some neat things. And in college is when the iPhone came out, and I couldn't afford an iPhone. Nobody could afford an iPhone. But then when I became, everybody had a smartphone by the time I started working, and having a job. So like, I just feel like when it comes to technology, I've just had the perfect indoctrination, and here I am as a business owner that has 5 years of success, and by success, I mean, I'm able to support my family and help some other businesses and even support some freelancers and employees and other things. So the moment for me is like this, this is the next door of opportunity to step through is okay. The tools that I've been given, I've turned into something that is a moderate to low success. What could happen with this next thing, and how many more people could I bring along on the ride if I step into this next opportunity?
It's interesting because there's a challenge there, I think, where, so you were mentioning the possibility that, so what if you use, so taking the StoryBrand system.
Yep.
And so what we've been doing is sitting down for an hour and a half, 2 hours with a client and going through StoryBrand questions and sort of filling in the blanks of that. But we are asking insightful questions to hone them in on the certain things about their business, and they are responding, and then we take that and we write it up. We could make that an AI thing. We could set a bot on that, and so we could have a bot ask those questions and process the answers and churn out a brand script, and in much less time and less human effort. And in one way that takes away some of my livelihood there. Mm-hmm. You're not paying me to create that brand script. But is there a way that we do much better work, that I can learn to use what the chatbot provides with that, mm-hmm. and to drill into a new level of information, of empathy even, mm-hmm. with the client, with understanding their customers, and telling that story more effectively. And it has saved us all a whole lot of time in the process, by getting this computer to do this. But we take it the next step because now we have time to take the next step. And we can create something that's even more brilliant for them. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that process is, and we won't know until we do it. But it's an interesting thought so it's not the fear of what work am I losing to this computer, but it is sort of the challenge of, mm-hmm. how does my work change if the computer is doing the first step of
Yeah.
the work I do?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it a little bit in terms of how do you bring it into the process that we currently use with a client. And I think you still have them answer like, I don't know how you take the initial human interaction out, the asking good questions, digging deeper, but taking that then and taking that content and putting it into an AI program of some sort, you could theoretically hit a button and create 5 different versions of what you're talking about. Or some of the things that are really cool is you can go, write this in a witty tone. And I did that with some emails, and I was like, so I wrote an email to a lighting company, and it's coming out with like, I hope your day is, I hope you've had a bright and shiny weekend, and we're all glowing over here to get started on the next phase of our project. And, you know, you know,
Now that's scary to me because that's what I do.
Exactly.
I am the writer that creates those witty tones or whatever
I
tone
know,
you want.
I know, and you
So,
can do
yeah.
friendly. You can, and whatever you come up with, And I've kind of settled on like, well, if I'm going to use a bot to help me write my emails, it can't be too humorous. It can't be too witty, because typically my emails are pretty clear and concise versus over the top. But I have other people that I work with that tend to write a more over the top email. Hey, I'm so excited. Can't wait to get started on this project. 3 exclamation points. That's not my style. So I'm worried that people are going to be like, he's obviously using something. He's on PEDs.
That's right. That's right. We got our marketer on the roids.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing that I think you can bring it into the process is this, like that ideation phase when you're going, that's a heavy lift. In the past couple years, I've taken up weightlifting as a fairly serious hobby. Not, obviously I'm not sitting across from you as the reincarnation of young Arnold, but but I
your guns there, yeah.
I enjoy throwing some weight around, and to me there's this thing when you're lifting weights, the heart, getting the bar off your chest when you're doing a bench press. That first, like, that from 0 to moving is the hardest part of the lift if you're doing it right. Because I take it down, it sets on my chest for a second, and then I push it up because I want to get full, the full experience, if you will. But that first, that's not moving, and then once it's moving, the force doesn't have to be the same. An object that's in motion tends to stay in motion, or
Right.
if you want to get into the laws of thermodynamics on here. But that's where I see AI as like, hey, let's get this moving a while. And that bar, you can, instead of doing 8 reps, you can do 16 or whatever, And so to me, that's where it goes. How do I just kind of, in my process, augment it, and, copywriting is largely there. Like, and some of the things that are coming up, one thing that I'm fascinated in is currently the AI is trained on a specific set of information. Well, how do I upload my information? Every brand script I've ever created, every website I've ever written, how do I create my own database and then say, hey, AI, create something like I would create? That's where it's like, that's where it's really fascinating to me. And to go, the idea is, oh no, we're going to take people's jobs. And I go, no, I think what's going to happen is everybody's going to do this at some level. They might be late to it. And everybody's jobs might, copywriters' jobs might change from copywriter to prompt writer. Prompt engineer is the term that I see on the internet. So there might be some of that. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be the need for really good copywriters. And I think the cream of the crop are not going to be replaced. It's going to be It's going to be the copywriters like me, frankly. Like that, I'm a jack of all trades. Copywriter is one of them. I'm also a web developer. I'm also a, you know, SEO specialist. Yeah, there's like a lot of tools in my tool belt, and there's only a few that are really like these are the ones that I do. And copywriting, I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't exercise that muscle enough to be truly great. So for me, it's like this is an opportunity. But I go, there's always going to be a place for Randy Petersen because Randy Petersen is truly you're the thing that the AI is trying to train on. You know what I mean? It's not trying to train on me. It shouldn't, anyways.
Yeah. I wonder. I think about the job I had from 2015 to 2018 as a content director for American Bible Society. I had several writers working with me and for me, and good writers, and really we hired them for their writing skill, and they turned out some good stuff. My role in overseeing them, and I did some writing on my own, but I would check over their work, and if it wasn't, we had somebody else doing the proofreading on it, so it wasn't that level, but it was it was tone, it was general content. Are you making this argument well? Are you building your case? So kind of an overview response to it, and a honing of the work. And it makes me think that the work that I was doing there as the overseer of the writing might still be in play. That AI could take over the work of copywriters, but there would still need to be an overseer who would oversee the tone, and give direction, but then also make changes to get it just right for that particular thing. Yeah. That might be a need. I am in no way dissing the writers that worked for me then. They were really fabulous, but just that dynamic there of overseeing the work of others, that the need for content overseers might be more important.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what all it will get into and touch. I'm certainly not trying to predict what the world will be like in the future. I'm more of what I can see right now. I do think in terms of like content marketing, which already is a super saturated, if you want to be an expert on a topic that's already covered, good luck, because there's already people churning out content on that. Humans. Yeah. Now you add in AI, and, I watched a video the other day and it was titled, "Watch me write 10 blog posts in an hour." And that's exactly what the guy did. Now, was it high quality? I don't know. He was writing about Italian suits, so it's not really my area of expertise, but it was a very fascinating video, something that I was like, oh, wow. So this, he's got a process where he can essentially churn out an article in 6 minutes.
Well, that is interesting because we've sort of, and the internet has brought us to this place where we have this voracious demand for content. Yeah. And so and you're right that content that is not necessarily good.
Oh, it's almost always terrible.
But it's content. I mean, the internet continually cries for content on certain subjects, certain SEO. That we just need content. So we're already at that point. Yeah. Of those content writers might as well be machines because they're not creating anything of particular artistic value.
The number of times that you search for something, click on a link, and I swear they purposefully hide the information you need at the end, or it's not even there. it's actually pretty bad at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
But I mean, in the same way that when I was a kid, when you got in an argument over no, that happened on this day, a historical fact of some sort, you just both went home. Maybe one of you had a thesaurus and not a dictionary, thesaurus, an encyclopedia,
Yeah.
and could look it up. Maybe.
Yeah.
If it was like me, mine, I grew up in the 90s, but my encyclopedia was from the 80s. So a lot of the information was outdated even in that time. So, but now we've got our phone, and there's never been a bar argument that couldn't be settled by somebody pulling out their phone.
That's right.
So I think AI is going to have a similar effect on. It's going to kind of integrate, and I don't completely know what that is, but it's going to integrate into our work in a way that makes us all more productive, whether that's better or not. But we live in a world and a country that growth is required. Our entire economy is based on growth, so it will grow. Because I mean, even we're now to the point where failure is not an option. A bank goes under, you give it money.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a way, it seems like we've been this world. If people are crying havoc about AI,
Yeah.
we've been building this world for a couple of decades now.
Yep.
The world of the internet, the world of content that really doesn't have any quality to it. The world of impersonality in communications, and so. Yeah, it really is not quite. All those negative factors are not quite as new as we think they are, and still a matter of concern of what the capabilities of the new bots are, what they are, and how they might affect our lives. But it's still it's not like we all of a sudden got here. We've been digging this grave for a while, or building this speedway for a while, and now we get to drive around it. So
Yeah, that's one way to look at it for sure. Well, I think we've solved.
I have one
Oh,
more
go ahead.
question that I want to ask
All right,
you,
one
and
more question.
this probably squeezes into somewhere else, but I think it might be good to have. And so maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes, so we talked a lot about StoryBrand here. And you and I both trained in that, and it does form a certain basis for the work that we do with clients. But it's not all that Brand Nerd is. And in fact, in recent conversations, I've heard you really developing more of a brand nerd philosophy that incorporates story brand elements to it, but also seeks, it adds other marketing things. And I'm not assuming that it's all new with you, that you're not making all of this up. I think you're making up some of it, using your creativity to do that. But I think you're combining a lot of elements into a comprehensive plan of how you want to work with clients going forward here. And yes, the story brand, the hero story of StoryBrand is important. The understanding of the problem that the customer faces and how the company can help them solve that problem. The importance of the customer as the hero. Those are essential StoryBrand pieces that will always be there. But you've also talked about a process of getting a customer to pay attention to you, getting a customer to like you, getting a customer to trust you enough to buy from you. That there's a process that the interaction between a company and a customer follows. And and you are framing your the brand nerd business around uh, some of this marketing theory, and I'm just wondering if you can talk more about that and where you're going with that and how you would articulate what you're doing with brand nerd.
Yeah, so it's a sales trope that I thought was more pervasive than it actually is, or at least according to my searches. I can't really completely locate where it comes from, but it is used here and there, and it's this idea of know you, like you, trust you, and it's used. The context I've heard it used in is largely around sales people when they're trying to understand the process of cold calling, or that kind of awareness building when you're actually in the first step is to actually get people to know you as the salesperson or you as the company. So it's know you, and then it's like you. So next step is, they have to have a reason to like stick around. So like meaning either if you're a salesperson, I think in the sales context, it's more like, oh, like you as in I'm willing to pick up the phone when you call sometimes. I'm willing to let you into my shop. But in a business sense, and in a marketing sense, I think it's more like, oh, I think this might actually solve a problem that I have. That's where that like you kind of comes into place. And then the trust you, relational capital when you're in the sales or as a company. Do they have, is there customers that will vouch for them? Is there companies that I know they work with that I see doing good things? So this idea of know you, like you, trust you is something that is definitely intrinsic to the way Brand Nerd looks at the marketing process, and because it's really three different sets of challenges that you're trying to get somebody to overcome. And then there's actually a fourth piece, which is buy from you too, because I actually think one of the things that a lot of companies overlook is how easy is it to buy from you.
Right.
Do I have to sign a paper document and then hand you a check? Because that's hard.
Yeah.
Like I gotta find a checkbook. I gotta print out a check, and sign it out. Or can I click on a box, e-sign, and enter my credit card number? Or even better, click on a button that automatically connects to my PayPal or my Apple Pay or whatever. How do we make that process as simple as possible? Much like, me and you have met on calls with numerous clients that their call to action is contact us. And it's like, how is that the way you want people to like that? Surely that is not actually what you want. You want more information. First of all, you want more information than an email and a name and a message. There's more information to that. But secondly, if you live your life by a calendar, you should be using some sort of Calendly or scheduling app so that they can just enter, boop, I would like to speak with you on Thursday at 2 p.m. For 15 minutes. And you have an appointment. And now somebody's in, they're going to see you, and they don't have time to, in the meantime, when you get back, maybe you get back to them quickly when they click contact us. Maybe they don't. Maybe the contact us is like, I don't even know if this is the right place. Probably nobody's going to see this, so they don't fill it out. There's so many hurdles that are in the way. So,
well, I want to get back to the like you thing. That so I mean, know you is basically establishing your presence in the market.
What do you do?
And name recognition, it's company recognition, that sort of thing. The liking is interesting, and I think the liking has an advantage in differentiation. In how a company establishes itself. Why should you buy when there are 5 companies in the marketplace doing the same thing? Why would you buy from this one rather than that one? Well, if you like them better, you will. You buy them. We see that on TV commercials all the time. When everyone is in crowded spaces, people are trying to be more likable than the others who are doing the same thing. In non-crowded spaces, they don't need to do that. It's just we're selling it. You need it, buy it.
Yeah.
But liking becomes an important part when there is a lot of competition there, and so there are elements of that come in. I don't see that a lot in the StoryBrand system. I think the StoryBrand assumes that. I guess they go to trustworthiness with the authority, and maybe the empathy is the liking part there. That if you show that you understand their
Yeah.
problems, then they will like you for that.
Yeah, when it comes to
Maybe.
a company, I mean that's the thing that makes you like them. I mean, I know what companies are doing, and still good marketers will get me if they speak specifically to a challenge that I have. And sometimes, a lot of times, I don't even believe that they can solve it, but they've identified my problem so precisely that I just go, well, I'm gonna at least click and read the first couple emails on their sequence to see if this is something, I want to invest in. But yeah, I think that like part when it comes to marketing isn't so much like in the sense of, oh, it's neat. It's more, this is very beneficial to me. It's the I'm the hero in this story, therefore, I like that story.
Yeah. Yes, I can see that, and that does seem to be emerging of the StoryBrand
Yeah.
theory to the know, like, trust
Yeah.
rubric that you
Yeah.
have. But
There's a couple operating philosophies that we have. You call them core values, and they're not really core values in the sense of like integrity, although we try to have integrity, or excellence. We try to be excellent, but one of
I'm in favor of both of those, by
yeah,
the way. If
good,
we
good.
have a vote,
Pro integrity, pro excellence,
yeah.
noted. Let the record state. But some of the things are. Your website is your most important or valuable. I haven't figured out which word I like better. Your important or valuable sales and marketing asset. And the reason isn't simply because maybe you would do, some businesses are like, well, if I run Instagram ads to my email platform, I can churn sales all day. My website doesn't really matter to me. It's like, but you don't own Instagram. Instagram tomorrow could go away. You would still have your website. So we think your website's very important. Plus, it's really the hub of everything. If you're selling something on Instagram, most likely they're going to your e-commerce store or whatever, which is your website, to actually make the purchase. So it is kind of the central piece. Another thing is we still really believe in email in a way that maybe other people don't. And this is StoryBrand. Like, StoryBrand's not afraid of email. They've got their whole sales funnel thing that is great. But email is still a way to get in touch with customers, and it's something that you own. You own your email list. You can take it to another email provider if for some reason yours goes away. But
Well, and it's still proven effective. I mean,
it's effective.
It's not sexy anymore. It's
Sure.
it's just there, and
Yeah.
it works. And so, yeah.
So, really we try to help companies practice those two things first, and if that's not something that they're interested in doing, it's probably not going to be a great fit. So yeah, that's where it is. And then, we are getting more and more into the content game by nature of the fact that we do content. So therefore, customers see what we're doing and they go, we'd like to do that as well. And we go, okay, for the right customer and the right long-term commitment, we can do that. But yeah, I mean, AI and some of the things that are really fascinating are definitely a part of that. And we don't shy away from things that make you more effective, like AI and automation, email automation, but also other work process automation. Yeah, it multiplies what you're capable of doing. So we think people should do that.
Yeah. Good.
Good.
I want you to say some really good statement at the end of this thing.
Oh, yeah.
That will sum up.
I think we've solved most of the world's problems in just one podcast. I can't believe
Yes.
we haven't sat down and done it before, because now, I mean, once we release this, I think the world will probably instantly be healed.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Everybody will put down the guns. Everybody will.
Yes, indeed.
No, but it's been good talking to you in this capacity.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I think I was worried that maybe we wouldn't have enough to talk about, yet here we are. I wrote down 6 bullet points, and we've taken 2 hours to talk about a lot of different things. So I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. It's fun to do.
All right. That's been my conversation with Randy Petersen. If you stuck around to the end, thanks, Mom.